What if I told you that the condo you trusted someone else to rent actually lost you money? What if the company promising to pay your HOA fees didn't, and then charged you for things they never proved? Welcome to the dark truth behind the Rosarito Beach Hotel's rental program, run by Inversiones Rosarito, or IRO. In this video, we'll show you exactly how they profited while owners lost thousands, how they leveraged owners' condos for their own benefit, and what you can do right now to stop the bleeding and take back your investment. Let's rewind. IRO, who also owns the Rosarito Beach Hotel, offered owners a rental program that sounded convenient. They'd handle renting your condo, pay your HOA dues and take 50% of the rental income. And for US-based owners, they'd deduct 25% for Mexican taxes before cutting you a check. You were told you could stay in your own unit for 8 weeks per year, but only 2 weeks during peak season. The rest? Reserved for IRO to rent out and profit. In theory, this should have worked. But in reality, it didn't. And here's another huge red flag. IRO has consistently failed to provide transparent financial reports. Instead, they were laser-focused on one thing: renting out their own 40 condos in the building. During high season, owners often couldn't reserve their own units for personal use, while throughout the rest of the year, they received little to no rental income at all. Lose-lose situation, but not for IRO. In 2025, IRO announced the program was no longer profitable for them, and that owners could exit without paying the $5,000 termination fee. Why now? Because they're under pressure. Now that IRO might actually be required to pay those HOA dues, just like every other owner not in the rental program, the pressure is on. Suddenly, they're rethinking whether it's worth renting out every unit, especially the ones they now call less profitable, like lower floor units and 2-bedroom condos. They claim lower units are tough to rent, but somehow theirs always seem to be occupied. And it gets worse. IRO never showed a single receipt proving they paid the HOA dues they promised to cover for owners in the rental program. Meanwhile, the building started falling apart. Cracks appeared, maintenance was ignored, and it became painfully clear something was wrong. That's when owners started demanding answers. IRO sent an email to owners recently saying, "Rental program is no longer financially viable." In 2024, the condo tower had just 31% occupancy, far below the 60% they claim is needed to break even. As a result, they've had to cover HOA maintenance fees for units they don't own, leading to what they call unsustainable losses. IRO claims the RBCH building needs at least 60% occupancy to turn a profit, likely because they're now on the hook for HOA fees. But that raises a serious question. What about the previous years, when occupancy never even came close? In fact, in August 2016, one of the busiest months, the rate was just 50.22%, according to their own documents. IRO claims they fully cover all marketing and advertising costs for condo tower rentals, emphasizing that the WA and owners don't contribute financially to these efforts. Yet they forget to mention what they charge the HOA. Here are the numbers for 2024 and 2025 presented by IRO. Now, you'd think a big chunk of our condo fees would go towards things we can actually see and benefit from, right? Like maintenance, repairs, or even amenities. But when we crunched the numbers for IRO's spending in 2024, what we found was pretty shocking. Get this. HOA paid 40% of the salary of an admin, 100% of the cost for a building manager, plus another 40% for an accountant. And then there's the truly baffling one, 100% for an auxiliary person that literally no one in the building has ever seen. Seriously, who is this mystery person? On top of all that, we're still left wondering about money for office supplies, telephone bills, or even legal expenses. And here's the kicker, the one that really stings. 10% of the budget went straight into IRO's pocket. So, it begs the question, where exactly did all these administration-related expenses go, and why are owners paying for services and people we can't account for? IRO says, our rental program income is 50% of unit revenue, from which we pay operating expenses. Given that the condo's HOA already covers substantial costs like salaries, security, insurance, maintenance, cleaning, and repairs, including nearly 5 million pesos for salaries in 2024 alone, what exactly are the additional costs they're incurring that aren't already part of these HOA expenses? 2025 salaries are projected at 4.5 million pesos. IRO argues, the main costs for rental program units or HOA fees. We also deduct bank commissions, up to 3% of gross, and hotel operational costs including staff, front desk, bellhops, housekeeping, general maintenance, and utilities. What they conveniently omit is that IRO already pockets 10% of the HOA's annual budget, amounting to nearly $100,000 for years. This is just for running the HOA of a building for which they also take 50% of the rental income. They assert that they deduct bank commissions that can reach up to 3% of the accommodation's full gross revenue. The 3% they claim is an IRO expense is actually a business tax write-off for them, completely unrelated to the owner. What's more, IRO takes their cut directly from the client's profit before taxes, which is problematic for several reasons. For instance, there are no records for these payrolls, and it's completely unclear how much of these costs should even be charged to condo owners, especially when these employees primarily work for the Rosarito Hotel. Similar to reception, the allocation of bellboy costs to owners is questionable without clear justification. Here is some records from the data IRO provided owners in 2024. Why exactly is the HOA being charged for housekeeping when IRO is supposedly covering those costs from their own 50% share? Strange, right? Looks like double dipping. Next, general maintenance. The HOA gets charged a lot for general maintenance. Given the lack of common area activity, it makes you wonder if that's actually for unit interiors. Unjustified HOA charges for water and electricity. Expenses for water and electricity have been billed to the HOA without proper justification. There is no way to determine whether these costs were genuinely incurred by the building as a whole or are the result of rental activities related to IRO's units, which, according to data, are prioritized for bookings and events held in the rooftop cielo room. Notably, private owners who choose not to participate in the rental program are required to install individual water and electric meters, yet IRO units and commercial spaces are not held to the same standard. Why is there a double standard in utility metering? Below is the 2024 water and electric charge to the HOA this much for common areas? It's just not adding up, especially since there are no meters monitoring IRO's usage. Past investigations already proved the HOA's water bill is excessive, even when you account for all the pools, jacuzzis, cleaning, and garden watering. Something is clearly off here. They claim they also cover costs for rental program, rooms like laundry for sheets and towels, amenity replenishment, cleaning, and minor repairs. But guess what? IRO provides absolutely no documents to back any of this up. IRO claims, "We understand owner frustration over months without income. But in these instances, the company likewise earns nothing from the unit and still bears all fixed operating and maintenance costs." They claim they receive no income when units aren't rented, but they're conveniently leaving out a huge detail. Even if those units are unviable, IRO is still profiting by using the condo's common areas, especially the parking lot and roof, for their for-profit private events. They're leveraging shared amenities while claiming financial losses. What's more, they completely failed to maintain the very areas they use, like the parking structure. Practically no funds were allocated, just let it rust and fall apart. Instead of upkeep, in 2021, they slapped owners with an extraordinary fee of 12.7 million pesos for it. As evident, the arrangement has been unfair to owners participating in the rental program. They bear the liability, while IRO reaps the financial benefits. This has been especially damaging for owners whose units have generated little to no rental income in recent years, yet who were still required to pay the extraordinary assessment fee in 2021, all while watching their property values decline. Now, you might be wondering about the owners in the rental program who actually did receive income. They didn't pay HOA dues and still got a check in the mail. But are owners actually getting a fair share of the income? That's a question we need to dive into. Let's take a closer look at a real-world example. Here's a breakdown of the income for a one-bedroom unit for 1 month. If the total gross rental was $816.81, and IRO takes their 50% cut, that should leave the owner with $408.41. Sounds simple, right? But here's where it gets complicated, especially for US citizens. Another 25% was immediately deducted for SAT, the Mexican tax authority. So, instead of $408.41, the owner only ended up with a mere $306.30. Now, let's imagine a different scenario. What if, instead of IRO claiming to pay their share of HOA fees all these years, the owners paid their own HOA dues and simply rented their units out themselves? Now, let's look at that same $816.81 gross rental. But this time, imagine you, the owner, are handling your own unit. If you paid your own WA fee of $231, based on 2024 numbers, you'd be left with $585.81. Mexican taxes still apply, so after that 25% is removed, you'd end up with $439.36. Let's compare that. IRO managed, $306.30 in your pocket. Owner managed, $439.36 in your pocket. That's an incredible 43.45% more for you. Okay, so that's just for 1 month. Now, imagine we stretch this calculation out over an entire year. What do those numbers really look like? We're talking $6,428 versus $10,777. That's a massive difference. That's $4,349 more right in your pocket. Now, what if you decided to take a different path entirely? What if you said, look, I just want to rent my unit long term. After all, there are plenty of people out there willing to spend $1,000 or less for a fantastic beachfront condo. This is very doable for a 1-bedroom unit. Let's do the math. $1,000 a month in rent. Subtract your HOA dues of $231, based on 2024. That leaves you with $769 per month, or a solid $9,228 a year. That's a perfectly reasonable number. You're directly covering your HOA dues, and it's a lot more than what many owners have been seeing for years. Here's the harsh truth. The HOA already has, or should have, enough employees and resources to manage every single condo rental, with or without a rental program. Think about it. Platforms like Booking.com and Airbnb? They're designed to be straightforward. With modern software, it's really not that difficult to run and organize short-term rentals. What IRO has been doing isn't some kind of magic. And frankly, they've practically admitted it's been a failure, given the consistently low occupancy rates. Questions owners have. If IRO doesn't rent my condo, what will I do? The good news is, owners are already stepping up to help other owners. They are working to ensure every single owner gets their own water and electric meter, so we can finally track our usage accurately. And here's another critical point. A separate entrance already exists. This entrance isn't controlled by the Rosarito Beach Hotel, giving them independent access and more autonomy. Here's the exciting part. As an owner, you get to decide how your unit is rented. You can opt for long-term tenants, or you can jump into the short-term rental game using platforms like Booking.com or Airbnb. Any income your unit generates from those short-term rentals will be entirely yours, after the platform fees are removed, of course. It's about putting you in control of your investment. If you decide to rent your unit long-term, you'll be fully supported. Let me remind you, the HOA expenses in 2025 already cover the salaries of the necessary employees. Managing tasks like paying water, garbage, and electricity bills simply doesn't require their full workday. The HOA has the resources. With the support of a committed group of owners, the existing staff could absolutely manage all condo rentals successfully, improve our building dramatically, and truly restore its reputation. The profits from our units should be benefiting the owners and the property itself, not lining the pockets of some third-party company. It's time owners took control. You deserve better. You deserve real income, real transparency, and real respect as an owner. Share this video. Talk to your neighbors.